Near the coast of Virginia, the Colonial Parkway stretches 23 miles, connecting the historic towns of Yorkton, Jamestown, and Williamsburg. Designed to preserve the natural beauty of the area, the parkway strafed serene rivers, lush estuaries, dense forests, and tranquil marshes. It was picturesque and quaint, its beauty timeless, yet it was possessed by the eerie stillness of all sanctuaries, one that comes with the certainty that such serenity was too fragile to last. In 1986, a monster emerged from the shadows, stalking the shoulders of the road at night, setting the stage for a series of brutal murders. Over 3 years, he claimed the lives of 4 young couples, transforming the parkway into a corridor of horror. The killer attacked in secluded spots, targeting parked cars along the Lover's Lane. The scenes of the crimes showed little sign of struggle, and when they were recovered, the bodies of the victims bore marks of a savage yet controlled rage. More bodies began to surface in the waters nearby, each discovery intensifying the fear that gripped the community. The serenity that once defined the parkway was replaced by a chilling silence, a reminder of the darkness that had taken hold. Law enforcement agencies were drawn into a web of speculation and dead ends. The lack of substantial forensic evidence compounded their frustration as the killer left behind only the faintest traces. The desperate quest for answers never stopped, each clue a fragment of a larger, more terrifying picture. As the years slipped by, the tales of the brutal murders and uncaptured killer refused to quiet. The stories of the Colonial Parkway murders continue to haunt the way only unresolved history can, an echo that rings out in the darkness, answering only to itself. In 1986, Cathleen Thomas was a 27-year-old Naval Academy graduate. She had served as an assistant protocol officer in the Navy, ensuring proper etiquette and procedure for ceremonial events. Despite her success, Thomas felt she had reached the ceiling of what she could achieve as a female officer and decided to transition to civilian life. In June, Thomas began a career as a stockbroker with Brokers Security Inc. in Norfolk, Virginia. She quickly adapted to the demanding world of finance, earning close to $4,000 a month, which was impressive for the time. Looking to continue her personal and professional development, Thomas was pursuing a master's degree in business administration at Old Dominion University. However, she had taken the semester off. Although she was passionate about her career and education, she reserved time to explore her passion for the outdoors. She was an avid jogger, and she was in strong physical condition. She shared a profound bond with Rebecca Dowski, her girlfriend of several months. Due to societal norms of the time, they kept their relationship relatively private, but it was a cherished and significant part of her life. The couple had plans for the future and were looking forward to spending their lives together. Dowski was a 21-year-old senior at the College of William and Mary, where she was studying business management. She was an intelligent and hardworking student who balanced her coursework with 2 part-time jobs, one as a clerk in the English department and one as a babysitter. The couple was last seen on October 9th, 1986, at the College of William and Mary. They had plans for the 5-day fall break, and Dowski called her parents and told them that they planned to visit friends in Carlisle, Pennsylvania before heading to the Dowski household. Unconfirmed reports suggest they may have visited the Yorktown pub that night. This would be the last time they were seen alive. On October 12, 1986, their bodies were discovered around 5:30 p.m. A jogger spotted Kathleen's white 1980 Honda Civic, which had been pushed down an embankment. The vehicle stuck between the Colonial Parkway and the York River. The vehicle had been soaked in diesel fuel in an apparent attempt to destroy evidence, but diesel fuel is difficult to ignite. It's likely that the perpetrator pushed the vehicle into the brush in an attempt to hide the evidence once he determined the vehicle could not be set ablaze. The back window of the car was smashed out, and inside the bodies of Thomas and Dowski bore the marks of a brutal assault. Thomas was located in the hatchback area of the vehicle. She had been strangled with a rope and nearly decapitated. Dowski lay on the back seat of the vehicle. She had been strangled and her throat cut, although not as severely as Thomas. Their wrists were bound with rope, suggesting they had been restrained before their death. The lack of significant defensive wounds on their bodies indicated that the killer had maintained tight control during the attack. Medical examiners determined that there were no signs of sexual assault. Despite the violence inflicted, there was little sign of struggle within the vehicle, adding to the eerie and calculated nature of the crime. 2 pieces of physical evidence were found at the scene that would later become significant. A handful of spent matches, likely left by the killer during the attempt to set the car on fire, and a few strands of hair clutched in Cathleen Thomas's hand. These fragments of evidence, however, would lead investigators down frustrating paths of dead ends and unanswered questions. Investigators believed that the women had been subdued and killed at a second location, as the interior did not contain large volumes of pooled blood. They speculated it could have been the Ringgold plantation site, a parking lot nearby that would have been out of view from passing vehicles. The purses, wallets, and valuables of the victims remained in the vehicle, ruling out robbery as a motive. The brutal murders of Cathleen Thomas and Rebecca Dowski shocked the community and marked the beginning of what would become known as the Colonial Parkway murders. Despite the evidence found at the scene, investigators faced numerous challenges. The seemingly random selection and calculated attack left law enforcement grasping at straws. The lives of these 2 promising young women were brutally cut short, leaving their families and friends to grapple with an unspeakable loss. Forensic limitations prevented the testing of the hair found in Kathleen's hand at the time. However, as recently as 2018, the hair from Thomas's hands had not been tested. The Colonial Parkway was not done with its grim revelations, and the darkness that claimed these 2 lives was only just beginning to emerge. It would be less than a year later before investigators made another horrifying discovery. David Knobling, a 20-year-old from Hampton, Virginia, was an adventurous man with a bright future. He worked for his father's landscaping business and as a salesman for water purification systems. He had a stable income, and he was ambitious to start his career and gain financial independence. He had a strong interest in cars, frequently spending his spare time in the garage. His 1986 black Ford Ranger was his prized possession. In 1987, Knobling's longtime girlfriend was pregnant with their first child, and he was both excited and worried about becoming a father. On the night of September 19th, 1987, Knobling had agreed to take his cousin, younger brother Michael, and Robin Edwards to see the movie Dragnet. When they discovered that the movie was sold out, they decided to visit a local arcade and play video games together. Robin Edwards, a 14-year-old from Newport News, Virginia, was known for her rebellious nature, having run away from home twice before. She was fearless and headstrong, even for her age, but she was deeply cherished by her family for her vibrance and independence. The group left the arcade to drop off Robin before her 11 p.m. curfew. The drive was less than 20 minutes, but it was raining. To keep Edwards dry, Knobling's brother and cousin rode in the bed of the truck. Knobling and Edwards rode together in the cab, alone together for the first time that night. After dropping off Edwards, the 3 returned to the Knobling residence to make pizza. Around midnight, just as the pizza finished baking, ᴘᴏ left the house again. Reportedly, Edwards snuck out of her home to meet him in the early morning hours of September 20th, 1987. It would be the last time either of them would be seen alive. The pair drove to the Ragged Island Game Refuge, a secluded area by the James River. Similar to the Colonial Parkway, this area was reputed to be a lover's lane, a place for young couples to park their cars and be alone together. However, it's important to note that Edwards' mother believed the two were meeting to talk. Edwards was precocious and perhaps represented what ᴘᴏ was afraid of, a young girl confronting the dangers of the world. However, no one would come to know what the two talked about that night. On September 21st, 1987, a sheriff's deputy discovered ᴘᴏ's Ford Ranger at the Ragged Island Wildlife Refuge. The windshield wipers were on, the keys were in the ignition, and the radio was still playing. The underwear and shoes of the victims were discovered in the floorboards of the vehicle along with ᴘᴏ's shirt. His wallet was found in the vehicle with nothing taken. However, Edwards' purse was never recovered. 2 days later, Lewis Ford, a beachcomber, stumbled upon a horrifying scene roughly a mile from their vehicle. Edwards was discovered shot in the back of the head, execution style. She had been sexually assaulted. The belt on her jeans was undone, and her bra and flimsy summer top were around her neck. ᴘᴏ was discovered a distance away from Edwards. He had been shot in the shoulder and the back of the head, suggesting he had tried to run for his life. He only wore jeans at the time, 13 quarters from the arcade, still in his pocket. Investigators dragged the river, hoping to find a murder weapon, and they searched the beach with metal detectors, hoping to find bullets or casings. They found nothing. The tide had changed, and it had rained twice since their disappearance, washing away footprints and degrading any forensic evidence. They believed that the killer may have taken control of the couple in the vehicle and marched them down to the beach to a more remote area where gunshots would not be seen or heard. ᴘᴏ's mother told reporters that she believed only a man in uniform could get him to leave his truck without a struggle. While investigators found no relevant clues at the scene, a few months later, the body of Brian Pettinger surfaced at the mouth of Sᴜᴘᴘᴏ Creek, a short distance away from where the two bodies were found. However, Pettinger's case will be discussed later in this video. The deaths of ᴘᴏ and Edwards instilled fear in investigators. The haunting similarities between the two cases pointed to a potential serial killer. And just over half a year later, these fears would deepen. Keith Call was a 20-year-old computer science major at Christopher Newport University in Newport News, Virginia. Originally from Gloucester, his fascination with technology began early, marked by his ownership of a Commodore 64 computer. He worked part-time at a local retail store and maintained an active social life. On the evening of April 9, 1988, Call invited Cassandra Lee Haley, known as Sandy, for a date. At 18, Haley was a freshman majoring in business at the same university. She was an avid gymnast and model. The couple attended a party at the university apartments, leaving after midnight, although accounts of their departure time vary, with some suggesting 1:30 and others after 2 a.m. They were last seen in Call's red 1982 Toyota Celica, a high school graduation gift, including the license plate, Keefs. By the morning of April 10th, the vehicle was found abandoned at the York River Overlook on the Colonial Parkway around 9 a.m. The driver's side door was open and the keys were in the ignition. The driver's side seat was folded forward and Call's glasses and watch were on the console. Haley's purse was on the passenger floorboards with her wallet missing. Much of their clothing was found in the back seat, including a bra, underwear, and shoes, suggesting the couple was caught off guard. Investigators conducted extensive searches in the area surrounding the York River overlook. They combed through the dense woods, scoured the riverbanks, and even employed dive teams to search the water. Search dogs uncovered separate trails leading away from the vehicle. Haley's trail led a mile west along the parkway to Indian Field Creek and entered the water, while Call's trail followed westward but circled back along the shore to the bottom of the cliff below where the vehicle was parked. Both trails ended at the water, and the dogs didn't find a trail leading back out. The canine units were taken on the water, and multiple dogs indicated the scent of a cadaver nearby, but dive teams found no bodies. Call's vehicle was spotted 3 times early morning Sunday before it was discovered by authorities. Call's brother Chris saw the vehicle around 4:30 a.m. and noticed the door and trunk were open, but he didn't identify the vehicle as his brother's. An employee of the Eastern State Hospital saw the vehicle shortly after and claimed to have seen the vehicle with the door open and the dome light on. Lastly, Call's father saw the vehicle around 7 a.m. on his way to work. He saw the license plate, Keefe's, and he knew it was his son's vehicle. He stopped to inspect the scene, and he found the driver's door open and the front seat folded forward. Although authorities said they found the keys in the ignition, the father claimed they weren't there when he was at the scene. Call's father wasn't worried, as he assumed his son and date had stayed out until dawn to watch the sunrise or stopped to go to the bathroom, and he left the scene surprised but not unsettled. The secluded location, absence of the victims, and eerie similarities with other Lover's Lane killings pointed toward a calculated serial killer active in the area. The police exhausted every route of investigation, and the captain of the York County Sheriff's Office recruited Dorothy Allison, a 63-year-old psychic from New Jersey. The captain told journalists, "I don't think I will ever reveal what Dorothy has told me." The bodies of Haley and Call were never recovered. The FBI drew connections between cases and speculated that the perpetrator might be a law enforcement official or impersonator, which could explain the victim's compliance. The missing wallets of Haley and another victim, Dowski, while other wallets were left in plain view, implied the victims might have been reaching for identification when confronted by the perpetrator. The haunting disappearance of Haley and Call left a profound sense of unease, hinting at the possibility of a serial killer operating with unnerving precision. Just over a year later, these fears would intensify as another couple disappeared without a trace. Daniel Lauer, 21, was a soft-spoken young man from Amelia County, Virginia. His mother described him as a loner, a high school dropout who lived with his family and worked for his father painting houses. Lauer lived a quiet life, but he had trouble with the court system in the recent past. He had fallen in love with a 15-year-old girl and signed a marriage license with her, forging her age so as not to require the consent of her family. As a result, he spent 3 months in jail after a felony conviction, and he was forbidden to speak to the girl until she turned 18. Reportedly, Lauer was heartbroken and struggled to move on. His younger brother Clint Lauer had recently moved to Virginia Beach with his fiancée Anna Marie Phelps. They were a young couple, looking to spend their youth in a city with a vibrant nightlife and ample employment opportunities. However, the couple was struggling to make ends meet. They believed Daniel was struggling to leave the nest and find his future, so they invited him to move to Virginia Beach and live with them. It was an opportunity to start a new life. It was just before Labor Day in 1989. Lauer was afraid to make the trip to Virginia Beach by himself, so he asked his only 2 friends, Joe and Jeanette Godsey, if they would go on the road trip with him. The couple brought along their 18-month-old daughter, and the group arrived without incident. Although their electricity had been turned off and phone disconnected, Lauer was excited and decided to move in with the couple. The following day was Labor Day, and the group left to return to Amelia County. Daniel would pack his belongings, and Anna Marie Phelps joined the group on their return journey, excited to visit with her family for the day. They dropped off the Godseys and spent less than an hour at Lauer's home while he packed a single bag. His mother insisted on sending him with a brown electric blanket. He told his parents goodbye, and he expressed sorrow at leaving his father's business. He promised to return on weekends to help with painting jobs until he got a job of his own that would keep him from coming. Lauer and Phelps visited her parents at their double-wide trailer. Phelps was just 18, a recent high school dropout looking forward to a new future. Her mother packed linens and canned goods, and after spending several hours, the two climbed into Lauer's 1972 tan Chevrolet Nova around 11:15 p.m., headed for Virginia Beach. It was the last time they would be seen alive. They would have headed eastbound on I-64, but around 5:30 p.m. on September 5th, the vehicle was discovered abandoned at a rest stop near Providence Forge, parked halfway on the road and half in the grass of the acceleration lane headed westbound. They likely stopped here around 1 or 2 a.m., just a few hours into their trip. The passenger side window was down and door unlocked. The key was found in the ignition, and the vehicle had 3/4 of a tank of gas. In the driver's side door, investigators found several feathered roach clips, and the Godseys reported that these were hanging from the rearview mirror on the previous trip. The floorboards had beer cans and diapers. Phelps's purse and wallet were missing from the vehicle. No money was found, although Lauer's parents believe he had $160 in his pocket when he left their home. Over a month later, on the morning of October 19th, 1989, the bodies of Anna Marie Phelps and Daniel Lauer were discovered in a wooded area near I-64, not far from where the car had been found. The discovery was made by bow hunters who stumbled upon the skeletal remains covered with a brown electric blanket. Their bodies were still clothed. The advanced state of decomposition made it difficult to determine the exact cause of death, but by 1990, investigators believed the couple had been stabbed to death. The investigation was complicated by a lack of physical evidence. The remote location where the bodies were found, combined with the time that had elapsed since their disappearance, left few clues for investigators to follow. The brutal murders of Lolly Winans and Julie Williams in 1996 are sometimes speculated to be part of the Colonial Parkway murders due to the eerie similarities with other cases and geographic proximity. Lolly Winans, 26, was an adventurous and spirited young woman from Minnesota. Winans was a skilled outdoorswoman working as a wilderness guide and educator. Julie Williams, 24, also shared a love for nature. She was a geologist and an avid hiker. In late May 1996, the two embarked on a camping trip to Shenandoah National Park, a picturesque and popular destination known for its stunning vistas and serene landscapes. Winans brought along her golden retriever, Taj. The couple, who had been dating for several months, explored the wilderness and decided to renew their camping permit to stay longer. A park ranger dropped them off at Stony Man parking lot on the evening of May 24th, 1996. This was the last time the couple was seen alive. Camping regulations required camps to be set off-trail, but their site was visible from the nearby bridle trail frequented by horseback riders. Williams planned to return before the end of the month. When she didn't, her father began searching on May 31st. However, it wasn't until June 1st, 1996, that park rangers discovered the bodies of Winans and Williams at their secluded campsite. Both women had been bound and gagged, one with cloth bindings and the other with duct tape. Their throats had been cut so severely they were nearly decapitated. One body was found in the tent, while another had been dragged in a sleeping bag to a nearby creek and left near the water. The golden retriever, Taj, was discovered unharmed in a nearby area. A camera was recovered with the bodies, and the last picture was taken on May 24th at Hawksbill, the highest point in the park. The medical examiner determined they had likely been killed on May 28th. Neither woman had been sexually assaulted, and DNA was lifted from the cloth bindings. Darrell Rice was an early suspect. He had committed previous crimes against women in the Shenandoah National Park, and he was caught on camera entering the park on May 25th. He was already in jail in 1997 when he was accused, and he stated in court records that he was openly homophobic and had motive for the murder. Yet, DNA results exonerated Rice from the killing. In June 2024, federal authorities announced a breakthrough in the case. DNA technology and persistent investigative efforts led to the identification of Walter Leo Jackson Sr., a deceased serial rapist from Ohio, as the perpetrator of the murders. Jackson, who died in prison in 2018, had a long history of violent offenses. While the murders of Winans and Williams may be solved, the enigmatic and brutal killings along the Colonial Parkway have left investigators grasping for answers, their desperation growing with each passing year. The Colonial Parkway murders spanned from 1986 to 1989, leaving a haunting legacy in the area. By the 1990s, the FBI and Virginia State Police had connected the crimes through a series of striking similarities. They believed this was the work of one or more serial killers. The victims appeared to be chosen at random, killed without any discernible motive like robbery or passion. The murders occurred in secluded and scenic areas, often reputed to be lovers' lanes. The victims were primarily young couples seeking privacy from their roommates or families, only to encounter unimaginable horror. The crime scenes were notably devoid of any signs of struggle, indicating the perpetrator maintained strict control throughout the prelude to the murders. Victims were often escorted away from the vehicle to even more secluded locations. The method of killing varied, including some shootings and some stabbings, which suggested the killer was adaptable and/or possibly evolving. The motivation appeared to be a psychological need, which meant the killer would likely not stop willingly. The geography of the killings suggested that the perpetrator was familiar with the area. The proximity to water, rope as bondage, and diesel fuel suggested the perpetrator may be a waterman, someone with a boat, fishing equipment, and familiarity with the coastal waterways. They believed he may have had a history as a voyeur before progressing to murder. Early on, investigators theorized that the perpetrator was impersonating a law enforcement officer. The scenes suggest a high degree of compliance from the victims, evidenced by the lack of struggle and wallets plainly visible, as if they had been accessed to present identification. As investigators delved deeper, reports emerged of a man impersonating an officer along the Colonial Parkway following the Thomas Dowski murders. In 1992 and 1993, additional reports surfaced of a man in a blue vehicle using a red flashing light to pull over two women. Startled by passing vehicles, he fled the scene before detaining the women. The suspect was described as a white male, approximately 6 feet tall with brown hair, wearing a partial police uniform. By 1990, the FBI and Virginia State Police formed a joint task force to pursue leads and inquiries related to the Colonial Parkway murders. They announced plans to broadcast segments on local television with the hopes of renewing interest and generating leads. Special Agent Irvin Wells III, who was the head of the task force, revealed that investigators believe a second person was present during the slayings, which was confirmed by evidence at the scene. The presence of a second individual could explain the compliance of the victims. Renowned sociologist Jack Levin noted that by 1990, 30% of serial killers operated in teams. They were often brothers, cousins, or close friends, with one being dominant and the other subordinate. In 1992, Virginia State Police psychologist Larry McCann publicly confirmed his belief that there was a second person present during the murders, speculating that this partner may have been jailed or killed, potentially explaining why the murders stopped after 1989. Although the psychological profile appeared to be thorough, investigators struggled with a labyrinth of dead ends. As they pieced together fragmented evidence between cases, they began to focus on potential suspects who exhibited bizarre behavior and connections to the crimes. The search for answers led them to examine individuals with questionable pasts and weak alibis. Ron Little emerged as an early suspect, his activities casting a shadow of suspicion that investigators could not ignore. A New Zealand native, Little arrived in the US just a few years prior, co-owning a security company initially known as Liberty Security, later rebranded as Advanced Security and Investigation Services. Despite its grandiose name, rumors suggested this operation did little more than guard a local gas station. Bizarrely, 32-year-old Little told journalists in 1988 that he was the prime suspect in the FBI's investigation, claiming he had been interviewed in connection with 3 victims. Little's connections to the victims were unsettling. He worked with Bonita Edwards, the mother of Robin Edwards, who disappeared in 1987. He had also employed Brian Pettinger as a security guard and loss prevention officer. Pettinger's body was discovered on February 1, 1988, by fishermen in Chuckatuck Creek, an outlet of the James River. His nearly nude body, bound at the wrists, ankles, and neck, was found downstream from where the bodies of Edwards and Knobling had been recovered months earlier. Pettinger had suffered blunt force trauma to the back of his head and was thrown into the river alive, doomed to drown by his bindings. He had last been seen at a ballroom dance studio in Hampton, Virginia. His vehicle found abandoned 2 days later in the Newmarket North Mall parking lot. Little had also employed Lori Ann Powell at his security company. Powell, 18, was last seen alive around midnight on March 9, 1988, after leaving her boyfriend's vehicle during an argument. She was last seen walking along Route 614 toward Route 17. Nearly a month later, her body was discovered in the James River, about 6 miles from where Pettinger had been found. Powell had suffered multiple stab wounds, the fatal one to the back of her neck. Her boyfriend, though initially a suspect, maintained his innocence until his death in 2016, despite failing a lie detector test. Investigators meticulously examined Little's background, character, and movements, especially after he boldly claimed to know the identity of the killer and the next intended victim, yet refused to name them publicly. This brazen behavior was suspected to be a tactic to draw attention to his security business. Little's provocations towards the FBI, challenging them to arrest him, only added to the enigma. One investigator commented, "Little must have his own reasons for stirring up such media attention. The whole situation doesn't even merit a response." Though Little might not have been directly responsible for the Colonial Parkway murders, he soon fell under the scrutiny of the Immigration and Naturalization Service. They discovered he had falsified paperwork, claiming to have been single without a criminal record. However, the INS found that he was married in New Zealand, and he had married again in the United States. The INS revealed his extensive criminal record, including burglary and multiple convictions. Additionally, a firearm was found in his possession, violating his visa terms. Consequently, the INS filed 20 felony charges against him, leading to his deportation in 1989. Yet, As one suspect was dismissed, another person of interest emerged. Fred Atwell, who had a criminal record of theft in his youth, became a deputy in Gloucester County in 1981 and received a pardon from the governor to carry a firearm. However, Atwell eventually resigned to become a bounty hunter. Later, he involved himself in the Colonial Parkway murders, conducting his own investigation and providing families with fragmented information. The Colonial Parkway murders grew cold over the decades, but in 2009, the Mid-Atlantic Training Academy contacted Atwell to speak on the case. Although he claimed to be involved in an unofficial capacity, they attempted to convince him by providing a CD of graphic crime scene photographs of the murders. Atwell copied the CD and sent it to multiple media outlets, leading to the story breaking publicly. These photographs had been taken by an FBI photographer during the investigation. After leaving the FBI, the photographer used the images in classroom settings without proper authorization, resulting in their improper circulation. The FBI seized the photographs from Atwell, journalists, and the Academy. This mishandling caused significant distress to the victims' families and raised concerns about the integrity of the investigation, further implicating Atwell. Investigators interviewed Atwell and confiscated his notebook, which contained details from his unofficial investigation. In 2010, Atwell told journalists he had nothing to do with the murders, but acknowledged fitting the profile and being on the suspect list. Then he was arrested in 2011, but not for the Colonial Parkway murders. In late 2010, Atwell orchestrated a fundraiser, selling tickets to raffle a new Chevrolet Corsica. Victims' family members and supporters bought tickets, believing their donations would be added to the reward money and reinvigorate the case. However, Atwell defrauded the donors by drawing a winning ticket with a fake name. A subsequent investigation revealed that he had taken the Corsica for a test drive from a nearby dealership. During the investigation, Atwell solicited $20,000 from a victim's family member, but failed to obtain the money. Later, he committed armed robbery while in possession of a firearm. He was captured, sentenced, and served nearly 10 years in prison. While Atwell may have faced justice, the Colonial Parkway murders remained unsolved. Ironically, his actions brought renewed interest from the FBI, inadvertently benefiting the case. Seeking to combat negative press, the FBI moved the Colonial Parkway murders to the top of their list of cold cases, and they began their investigation with renewed vigor. Alan Wade Wilmer emerged as an early suspect in the Colonial Parkway murders. In 1988, an FBI electronics technician on his way home from the command post noticed a blue 1966 Dodge Fargo truck on I-64. The license plate read EM Raw, which unsettlingly suggested Eat Them Raw. This vehicle matched the description given in a Peeping Tom report along the Colonial Parkway. A couple had reported the vehicle's driver, who had accosted them while they were parked on the parkway, speaking to them through their lowered window before fleeing the scene. 4 days after Richard Call and Cassandra Haley disappeared, police began covert surveillance of Wilmer's residence. Wilmer lived in a trailer with his brother, who was already a suspect in another county's murder case. During their surveillance, officers observed one of the brothers spray painting the bed of the truck and vacuuming its interior. The FBI quickly obtained a search warrant, but found no concrete evidence inside the vehicle or the trailer, though they did find weapons, handcuffs, and pornography. Wilmer was a rugged waterman who fished and farmed oysters and clams. He operated the Better Tree Service Company and held a membership at a hunting club. His muscular build from hard labor and a rumored history as a peeping Tom made him a person of interest. When questioned, Wilmer claimed he was alone and near the area when Call and Haley were murdered. Without evidence or a confession, the FBI resorted to a polygraph test. Wilmer passed with flying colors, and he was consequently cleared from the suspect list. Years later, as part of a renewed cold case strategy, the Colonial Parkway murders received fresh scrutiny. Investigators meticulously re-examined old evidence and witness statements, revisiting all potential suspects, including those previously cleared. In December 2017, Wilmer's body was discovered by a delivery man at his home. He had been dead for weeks, succumbing to arterial sclerosis at the age of 63. During the medical examiner's investigation, DNA was collected from Wilmer's body. In June 2024, the Virginia Department of Forensic Science matched Wilmer's DNA to the slayings of David Knobling and Robin Edwards, as well as the death of Teresa Lynn Howell. In 1989, 29-year-old Teresa Howell lived alone in the Pines of York apartments in Hampton, Virginia. Estranged from her husband and children, Howell struggled with depression and substance abuse. She was last seen outside the Zodiac Club at 2:30 a.m. on July 1, 1989. The next day, construction workers found her clothes along a tree line, leading to the discovery of her body. Howell had been sexually assaulted and strangled. As of July 2024, investigators do not have conclusive forensic or physical evidence linking Wilmer to the other Colonial Parkway murders beyond the cases of David Knobling and Robin Edwards. Given the FBI profile, questions remain about Wilmer's brother. The story of Mary Kaiser Harding's disappearance and murder casts a long shadow over Lancaster County, Virginia. Harding was a dedicated bookkeeper at a local bank and a mother of 2 young children, a 4-year-old boy and a 1-year-old girl. Her sudden disappearance sent ripples of concern through her family and the tight-knit community. Her husband, Emerson Harding, was out fishing on the day of her disappearance. On August 23, 1985, Harding was reported missing. The first signs of trouble were found at the back door of their home. A toppled litter box and a sandal nearby indicated that Harding might have been surprised while taking out the trash. Another sandal was found in the driveway. For 4 days, search parties scoured the surrounding landscape until her body was discovered in the Rappahannock River near the marshy coast of Belle Isle. Harding's body was in an advanced state of decomposition. She was found nude with slashes on her back. A rope and heavy chain had been tied to her neck, the other end fixed to a large cinder block, equipment typically available to a waterman. The investigation quickly identified Emerson Stevens, a local crabber and oysterman, as a person of interest. Stevens, who lived nearby, had participated in the search for Mary and even attended her funeral. Described as a loner and a drinker who frequently talked about women, Stevens became the focus of the police investigation. A tip came via phone describing a light-colored truck in the Harding driveway on the night Mary disappeared. Another witness claimed to have seen a white truck with a short bed, which they identified as belonging to Emerson Stevens. Additionally, Stevens had a history of peeping into neighbors' windows, further implicating him. Based on this circumstantial evidence, Stevens was convicted of Mary Harding's murder. Before going to prison, he told his wife to divorce him and move on, which she eventually did. However, 23 years after his conviction, Emerson Stevens spoke with a representative from the Innocence Project, and in 2021, he received a full pardon as the case against him fell apart under renewed scrutiny. With new interest, the FBI reviewed their original case notes and discovered that the initial suspect list included watermen living within 500 to 600 yards of where Harding was discovered. One name on this list stood out: Keith Wilmer, brother of Alan Wilmer. Reports surfaced that Keith had made obscene telephone calls and aggressive sexual advances toward 2 women in town, even following one home after dark. These behaviors painted a disturbing picture of Keith Wilmer as a potential threat. Investigators had polygraphed Wilmer about Harding's disappearance and murder, and the results had been inconclusive. The case of Mary Harding indicates the chilling possibility that Wilmer may be capable of murder, and he would fit the profile of the second perpetrator in the Colonial Parkway murders. However, as of 2024, there have been no new developments or evidence to support or refute his involvement. The Colonial Parkway, with its serene landscapes and historical significance, now whispers a tale of terror that time cannot erase. The savage murders along this route have forever tainted its beauty, each crime scene a stark reminder of a predator's reign of terror. Over nearly 4 decades, the relentless search for truth has brought some answers, but questions still remain about the unresolved cases and the possibility of a killer still being at large. An eerie reminder that the Parkway's beauty and tranquility is at risk of being shattered again at any moment.